sunburnt, but it's okay. It's not as bad. Someone else is way more sunburnt than I was.
Yeah, I think we're live.
Sweet. Awesome. Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. My name's Franklin, and I'm going to be doing a little digital painting demo today in celebration for Plein Air Pro that's coming up. It's going to be a little bit of a different demo with the Tourbox right here. And Tourbox was kindly enough to sponsor this and sent a Tourbox Neo over my way just to test it out. And so far, I've been liking all the little customizations. There are some things that I wish there was more to it, but like overall, I love the knobs and the dials to really hone like all the brush sizes, zooming in and out of things. That's really cool. And the ergonomics is really fun too, because it feels like a video game controller. I'm a gamer myself, and yeah, this probably will make my workflow much faster, along with just making it more fun and healthier for my hand. On traditional keyboard, I'm like always stretching over back and forth, and it's really tough. But yeah, before we get started, a little bit about myself. I'm an artist over at the Bay Area, mainly in San Francisco. And I heard about Warrior Painters a little while back, and they seem like a really cool group who do plein air painting just like me. I also host a group up here north before I learned about the Warrior Painters. And I like plein air painting because outdoors is fun, painting is fun. Why not combine both? So that's one of the best activities you can do, especially during the pandemic too. That really kept my sanity in check. I worked in the game industry for 10 plus years and a little bit in the animation industry too. But overall, I would still say painting is my passion. So I just want to paint, and my job is to fund me and my passion to go painting. Now, I recently came back from a camping trip over at Big Sur, so you can see on my screen right now. There are 3 pictures that are almost the same, but some of it is different with the exposure levels. This one's more exposed towards the shadow side. This one's an HDR photo. And then this one's more exposed. Yeah, this is a higher key. So right here, I'm just trying to gain different contrast levels between all these images and trying to use my memory too, since I'm not being able to plein air paint then and there with my Cintiq and my laptop. So I decided to take different photos. So for reference photos, I will always take multiple exposure levels just so I could capture something that is more to what I see. Like this is what I see in the shadow when my eyes are focusing in the shadow area. And this is what I see in the light when my eyes are more focused on the light area. Now, our eyes can see a lot more than the camera, so that's why I take multiple reference photos. Also, if there's any questions, feel free to direct it over to events chat, or actually text Lyndon, where should we direct the questions to? Yeah, that'd be great. And Lyndon, you could just help me ask questions. So feel free to ask any questions whenever y'all need to ask questions if I'm going too fast, too slow, or my Tourbox hands are going kind of crazy, something's out of whack. But yeah, so a little bit of my painting style is quirky, fun, colorful. Sometimes people describe it as cozy. But overall, I just like playing with colors, shapes, and design. And yeah, let's get started. So I'm gonna put this image to the side on my reference monitor, but I'm using PureRef right now, and this is really a handy tool. I've already started doing a little bit of sketching just to like design and find shapes. I chose a different aspect ratio because I just like something more filmic. So I'm going to overall use this to just decide where I want to. Ooh, let's see, I could adjust opacity and such, but trying to figure out where I want to like hone in some of the light aspects of stuff, and maybe just change up some of the quality of the image itself. So I'm not beholden to my reference. Reference is really my reference, and it's going to be a little bit different from the photo. The overall goal of when I'm painting is really to create a painting that I want to create and not copying directly all the time. So I'm trying to find elements about this reference image that I really like and where are my eyes gravitating towards to. So I see some like boulder shapes. I see the white water around this area. Quick undo real quick. Let's see, erase. Oh yeah, before I show anything, there's this really cool on-screen tool that you get to use the little dials right here. There's these little on-screen D-pad. So I could just switch over to my erase tool and then switch over here to my brush tool. And then for starters, like before I could grasp everything, there's this little on-screen overlay, so I could just really just check it out and make sure that I'm clicking on the right things until it becomes muscle memory and habit. So right now I'm just playing with some shape design. And getting an overall feel of my big, medium, small shapes. Now I'm probably gonna add some trees over here. So that's gonna be kind of cool right here. And then a little bit of that. Yeah, Big Sur was really inspiring. I did more fishing than painting, but I just had a blast over there. I definitely want to go back just for like a painting trip purely. But yeah, there's just so many cool things you could do over there. I highly recommend anyone who hasn't been to Big Sur before to check out that California coast. All right, so for this guy over here, I really want to emphasize this rock, so this one I might change its shape a little bit. And then there's some vegetation around this area. I'm going to zoom out real quick. So I'm just playing with rhythms. I'm more of a shape-based person when I'm painting, but recently I've been getting into more line. So I've made this little sketch brush that I just really like. I'm just trying to get more used to. Yeah. Yes. Totally. Let me see what I can do about that. I'm gonna just copy, and then we're just gonna paste. Huh. See if I could learn how to paste on Tourbox real quick. So the cool thing about Tourbox is you get to customize everything. So that's something I'm like, do I have paste on here? Not set. So I'm gonna do a paste real quick. So I don't like lasso tool, so let's do that. Change this to Control V, paste. Okay. So now I have that. I'm gonna quickly copy. Oh, well, I'm copying directly from PureRef. That's a problem. But I could go grab images, and I'm going to just have it cropped on the side while painting alongside of it. Let's do the HDR version. There you go. I'm gonna do that. So this works for everyone, right? So you kind of see the aspect ratio is a little bit different. Okay. Oops. All right, so now we can see my reference. It's a lot easier. And let's continue. All right, so I have this rock right here that I really like and I feel attracted to. This area right here, kind of like that too. So I'm going to just kind of expand that into this quadrant right here. And what else? So mainly when I'm analyzing these things, I'm also trying to figure out like light and shadow. So that's like a big part of my composition. Now I'm going to take this. Usually when I'm sketching, I go through like several phases of sketches just so I could just quickly make sure that I'm making the right decision. I spent the most of my time in the sketch phase because what I've learned is to make sure that I have everything set before I start committing into painting. Do some round shapes here. Let's shrink this rock actually. I don't want it too imposing. I want the really big rock to be right here. Give it a little bit of personality. And to be honest, this demo is only set for 2 hours, but I'll probably be working on it a little bit longer. Only because sometimes I get lost into a painting. It's just really fun. So there's this like cool triangle shape within the triangle. So that's actually pretty cool to use. Then there's these fan shaped leaves. And adjust this a tiny bit more. So there's a little bit of a curve to this waterfall. That's slightly like that. I just want to bring that a little bit gradual curve to it. There's a bit of an overhang of this rock that I want to capture too. Stretch out this lens a little bit and then just make that rock continue down. All right, got some overlapping shapes. Always great to show depth. So these, trying to figure out which rocks do I want in the shadow and which do I want in the light too. and raise this waterline a tiny bit. And with some shapes, scale, distance. So you can see that not every single shape is going to be exactly the same as over here. But I'm still trying to use the overall palette, the lighting structure. Yeah, just to not be beholden to the reference, but just have fun with it. Design it. Some fun little shapes over here. Yeah, this really gives the massive scale of a rock over there. Much better. Fun little cave. Some crevices and caves and such. That's gonna be really fun to play with. I always look for these little like pits of darkness, ambient occlusion. So I'll switch over to a larger brush. I'm using my dial to like just adjust. I love this feature right here where I get to adjust this brush on the fly. So I'm gonna do another layer. And this one I'm gonna just do 50%. There's one thing I wish on Tourbox that I could use a dial to adjust layer opacity. That'd be pretty cool. I haven't figured out if that's possible yet, but something to explore, I guess. So right now I'm just doing a quick lighting pass. Oh, and the reason I'm using pink right now is because it's a bit of green. The complementary color of green is towards the violet reddish area. Hopefully we get some of that hot pink to show through. But there we go. So this lighting scheme, we got a pocket of light over here, and actually let's dial this down a little bit. Have this rock catch a tiny bit of light. So I want to really make this a layer that I could use later. You'll see me working in clipping masks. That's one of my favorite ways to work in Photoshop. Or yeah, clip layers. Where I'll take a layer, I'll just click into that. So then anything I draw over here will be fitted in there. Cool. Now that we have that set, I'm going to duplicate my sketch a little bit and just multiply, set it on the very top, duplicate it again, set it on the very bottom. So then I can always turn this on whenever I feel lost. All right. Now that I have that, let's just start painting directly on top. So let's play with local colors. I'm going to use a fairly large brush just to like mass in some of these colors.
Hey Franklin, we have a
Yeah,
question from Joanna.
sure.
Question: have you used other products similar to Tourbox? How does it differ from other keypad styles, key differences?
I've used mostly keyboards, but I also seen like other ones where there's like buttons and such on the side. It's like a little gaming mouse thing. I think one thing about Tourbox is like I don't have to look in this area, and the feel of each key feels different. So if I was blind, if I can't see anything, I could still tell you this is a knob, this is like the long one, this is the short one, this is the side, and these little two buttons and such are like the little back and forth undo, redo. And that's just something that I think Tourbox really designed well. And yeah, that's actually pretty cool. Let me change this key real quick.
Thank you for the question, Joanna. If anybody else has questions, feel free to put it into the special events chat.
All right, sweet. Now that I changed that. All right, so I have these ready. Let's slather on some color. So let's do some really quick. So I tend to like to work really small. So I apologize if anyone can't see this right now, but this is how I picture things in thumbnail mode. I already have my value structure sort of set. Now I just have my thumbnail mode. I'm just gonna sort of just color pick. So let's start off with the distant sky. And I'm just going to be really sloppy with it. And this is the part where I'm just like trying to be accurate with more so color and value. This is actually supposed to be dull. So every time I put something down, I'm asking my question, okay, is it too saturated? Is it too dark, too light? Is it the right hue? Is it the right saturation? Is it the right shape even? So I'm just haphazarding, slapping things down until I get exactly what I want. Make this even bigger. And I kind of like the sort of chaotic energy of this especially when I'm like doing plein air painting myself, right? I'm just picturing me with a giant brush trying to imitate what I see in front of me in nature. And working at this tiny size really helps. And it also helps when you're doing your plein air pros and you're outside, you're strapped on time. Paint tiny. That's something I picked up from Mike Hernandez's workshop. Paint tiny with a giant brush, as he would say.
Oh, we have another question.
Okay, that's a little too dark.
Can you save multiple presets for one program? For example, a sketching set and a painting set.
Heck yeah. Look at all these like preset lists. Like this Photoshop, I'm gonna explore the option of playing this with Blender. I really wish one day, there's gonna be Procreate. That's my main painting tool, right? These days for fun. Photoshop just feels so much like going to work. And yeah, Clip Studio, whatever you need, or even just regular like your general settings too. So you just need to create a new preset and have a blast with it. Anytime you could also reset it. So that's something that's really cool about Tourbox. All right, continue slapping more colors on. So over here, I got my warmer greens, and then I want to really slap into my muted a little bit duller, cooler, but it's not like entirely cool. Let's look at it real quick and reanalyze it. So there's some like warmer shadow ones, and then like cooler ones, right? And each of these, like, there's some warmer tones here and a little bit cooler tones. So I'm looking at temperature too. So the main things I'm looking for is value. Value is number one because light and dark. It's the easiest thing to see. And then next is the temperature for me. Right, so is it warm or cool compared to like the rest of the things around it, but also compared to the overall image. And another next after that is like, okay, did I choose the right hue and the right saturation? So these are some of the stuff that I'm looking for too. Later on, I'll look for it. Is it the right shape? So is my brush making the right shape for me? But for now, I'm not focused on that yet because we're still in the thumbnailing phase. And if you can nail it in the thumbnail, everything becomes smooth sailing. So I'm playing with the range right here. I'm not going towards like super cool and super warm yet. Overall, I still want to make this feel a little bit warmer. All right, so right now I slapped that on. It's looking a little bit muted. I want it also too light, so value-wise I want it a little bit darker and a little bit more desaturated. Okay, that's feeling a little better. Now we're going to go into the sort of muted yellows. So as you're selecting into the hue of a warmer color, when you shift from the intense of the yellow, like the chroma, really saturated, if you shift over to something that's more desaturated, what's happening is it's gradually becoming more muted and also temperature-wise cooler. So that's what I'm thinking about right now. How do I show warmth without, going super warm, but also maintaining a value structure that makes sense? All right, that's looking okay. And I'm just going to simplify all the rocks for now to have the same tone. And we're going to change it later. This is just for simplicity's sake, having it all sort of there. And then we could do a little comparison. And let's slap in the... So now that we played with a lot of like warmer elements of it, I'm going to have within my color range, I'm going to just jump straight to the blues right here. So majority is generally in the warms, and then something a lot cooler. So the water is going to really help pop out in contrast too. Play with that. A little bit darker, more saturated blue, almost like an ultramarine blue or a phthalo blue even. And that's going to look super nice against it. And granted, so my thumb is really on the dial right now. I'm going to just change this a little bit, desaturate it a tiny bit. I still want some of the like magentas to poke through, so that's going to be just something that I like to have fun with. And then we're going to have the white water. Now, if I'm squinting, when I'm painting this stuff, like, let's check the value actually. So one cool thing was I set this thing to, when I'm clicking that little dial, I set it to proof colors. And if you do proof colors and you have a proof setup, customize, there's this thing called working dot gain. It changes it to black and white real fast, so you can judge your values right away. Now, on the reference image itself, the values right here to here, this is the highest value. Everything else right here is lower value in terms of the value scale. Now, if you see here and here, like obviously we could tell which one's lighter, which is darker. And then I want to maintain that same relationship right now too. So that's really important. A common mistake that I used to do would be like, oh yeah, that's white water, so I got to make it like super bright. And then you could see that competing element and the value structure kind of falls apart. So let's not do that. How do I make white water look white without changing the value as much? And that is the challenge right now. And that's why I'm referring to proofing my colors real quick. Values are looking pretty nice right now. I'm kind of happy with it. I'll zoom in a little bit more. So we're just slowly fine-tuning everything till we have exactly what we need. There's some of the water that I see some really awesome colors. And it's a very simple thumbnail. So if this is reading really well, now we could proceed to refining it. So I have my little color thumb. That's good. I can always refer back to it. Let's duplicate this. I'm going to insert that over here. So we have that. And then I'm going to take this one, duplicate it again, and put it over here. So we have it on separate layers. Awesome. Now that whatever I work in the shadow layer will override that, and then whatever I work in the brighter area will kind of override that. All right, so let's work into the light.
Hey, we have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
So with your proof setup technique, do you have a similar way of working when you're doing traditional painting, like checking for values?
I squint. So that's something that I usually do when I'm like painting. I just squint and just like it really condenses everything. It takes away a lot of things. So like our vision is kind of interesting. Like when you have like less and less vision, you see less things like detail, color, all that stuff. But the first thing you probably will spot is just light and dark. Like, is there light or is there no light? And that's what helps when you squint. And that's why your instructors or your teachers and whatnot, they always tell you like, hey, squint in your painting, step back and squint. Squint at the scene too, to see if like that. So mostly squint at the scene, and then squint in your painting later on to like see if it actually works out. All right, let's turn this off. Now that I have, actually let's lower this opacity a little bit. Cool. Yeah, hopefully that answers that question right there. So right now I'm gonna play with the sky area by just like varying things up a little bit, maybe popping a little bit of saturation here and there. I'm gonna switch over to like a brushier brush and see. Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, for me, my like I have a little bit of like I have glasses too. So I usually paint without my glasses, but my vision isn't like super bad, but it's bad enough to like drive at night and not read signs. Uh, okay. All right, so I'm going to take here and then start varying up some of these areas. So I'm just like exploring a little bit of that gradation. So like light's hitting here and it's sort of falling into this valley. And I'm trying to just like indicate a little bit of slow, gradual descent into a fall of light without losing my value structure at the same time. And I tend to like to use like a looser, brushier brush, only because it does a lot of work for me already. Okay, so this tree right here, let's check this value. Still maintaining that value structure. All right. So this tree right here is a little bit. Don't want to lose some of the value, but yeah. Usually, for these trees, like I'm hovering between warm green. It's a fine balance because if you think like trees are green, you just go here and just select the green. That green is just really neon and toxic, and this really doesn't work well with your scene. So it's a very slow fine tuning of things. And also like a little bit of like value shifts. Again, looking for those pockets of shadows. But value structure, still maintaining the same. Everything, again, it's relative. So you don't want to change too much of the value structure that you establish at the very beginning. So like this is, shadow compared to like these areas of the light of the leaves. All right, looking a little bit better.
Hey Franklin, do you stay this zoomed out for most of your painting?
Yes, and I know it's terrible for stream, but yes. One thing that I could do this. Let me see. Oh, I know. So do this, and then we can zoom all the way in. Yeah, this is kind of in eye level what I'm seeing right now. This is really tiny, but hopefully y'all can see a little bit better. All right, so I worked a little bit in light. I don't want to like work too much into there. I want to maintain the same level of detail throughout the painting. Sometimes people like to work just on specific like focal point and such until it's like finely tuned in to the level of detail they want. But for me, I like to jump around until the very end. Then I get to like add in those like really juicy highlights or the really really dark shadows.
Well, Alvin asks, Franklin, so you haven't had to go back to your keyboard hotkeys yet. How easy
No,
it is to program the Tourbox buttons?
super easy. You could do macros on it. So, like I have a macro where I have if I do flipping of stuff, so I can flip my canvas. So that's usually an action item that I use in Photoshop, where I have to like press the F2 button or whatever. But then like with this, like you always have this macro ready for you. Um, there's like fill with background color, fill with foreground color. You can kind of see it on this on-screen display for my D-pad. It really does like does a lot for me. and I can just do these things over there. Every single button is customizable to become a macro if you want it to. It's kind of nuts with the amount of customization you can do with this. And I'm still trying to get used to it because I'm a very basic person when it comes to like shortcuts and such, and I just have very particular taste about that. All right, let's see. Get into a little bit of variation of hitting it with a little bit darker tones. Gradually working my way down the tree lines. And really, I'm just always trying to like emulate this like sort of organic feel. And that's what I love about traditional painting, that a lot of things happen when you use these brushes with bristles. You use your medium either with water, oils, and it really does introduce a little bit of that unpredictable quality of stuff that I just really enjoy. So you can see me sample color picking a particular area and then shifting it like either a little bit cool, a little bit warmer based on hue, or a little bit darker, lighter based on like the slider over here, or warming like cool on saturation levels too. Do that real quick. I don't know about you guys, but I also make sound effects when I'm painting. Sometimes it's in my head, uh, especially right now, but most of the time it's kind of out loud when no one is watching. Now, I still have my line right here, so I could get to check the shapes later. But right now, I'm just still just fine tuning the color choices I have. To really hone in on stuff. Now that we're approaching the rock area, we could start adjusting some of the variation within the rocks too. We generalized it first already with overall warmish, darker tone, but now we could just go in and cool it off a little bit. Maybe we could start playing with a little bit of desaturated, cooler reds. Again, checking values, very important. I'm also just gonna zoom in real quick, check out this reference. I like to also zoom in on some of the details. So there's this like nice, really blue, like water, and I think it's also reflecting a little bit of the sky. But then you have these very like green, dark green patches of water, and then you got your reflections, of course, from the rocks. There's so much cool variations with the water that I want to play with. The rocks underneath, there's some like green, there's moss, there's like all these different elements that are growing into it that's affecting what we perceive. So that's something that I have to play with. Again, going from big to small, right? Just like how you go from big shapes to small shapes, you go from like your big color blocks into like smaller color blocks, and you start just varying things out a little bit more here and there. So I want to introduce a little bit of warmth, a little bit of desaturated, to see how that feels. It's not bad. Don't hate it. Kind of getting there. And this is the part where a lot of people dub the painting as the ugly phase. And every painting goes through its ugly phase, like a little ugly duckling, before it blooms and blossoms into a beautiful painting. And I would say keep working through it. Don't get discouraged. Or else you're always going to be stuck right here. And you can't expect a painting to just always look really great from beginning to end. But you have to give yourself that sort of trust and confidence. This ugly phase is especially painful when painting traditionally and outdoors. You get people coming up to you saying all sorts of things like, "Oh, what are you doing? Are you painting? Is this class?" One of the most discouraging things is, "Oh, what are you doing? Are you painting?" And then they're just like, "I want to see what you're painting," and you're in this ugly phase. It's very discouraging just to see them just come up and they just sort of silently retreat back without saying a word to you anymore. And you kind of wish, like, "Oh, wait, come back in like 20 minutes or something. It's going to look a lot better." We're getting closer and closer to our focal point rock, but I don't want to touch that yet.
Chia is wondering what type of sound effects you like to make.
It's like speed sound effects, like swishes, and uh, sometimes, most of the time though, my sound effects involved a lot of curse words where I am not having it if I screw up. But the curse words are just like indication of verbal indication of like, oh, I really need to fix this. I think my favorite thing about artists is they all have similar ways of like working too, especially when they screw up. Sometimes they're a little too hard on themselves. When I used to host like either plein air painting or portrait painting, there's something about like the last 5 minutes or so of like a session or something that has everyone hyper focused. But like if you screw up, you could just hear a loud, audible scream or like curse. I could definitely relate to that. Okay, I'm introducing a little bit of lighter value. I just want to see how that looks. It still looks okay in my shadow. It's still grouping within there, so that's okay. And then we can proceed. I'm going to start getting more shapes into this stuff. I know there's like a lot of chaotic pattern and texture on this rock, but I want to start making sense of it with just like basic rhythms. So I see a little bit of a roundness to it that I might emulate or imitate. round shapes within this container. That'd be pretty fun to do. Add a tiny bit of highlight and maybe pull it off a tiny bit more. Like catching a little bit of that guy. Maybe this rock has a little bit of that quality from the water that adds to the moisture that makes it a little bit more reflective. Turn off this line layer. You can slowly start seeing this form up. And we're going to start cleaning up some of these shapes and define it a little bit more. Using that line layer that we had earlier.
Alvin is asking about how the buttons feel here.
That feels reachable. That's the main thing. Like before on the keyboard, my hand is not, well, it is big enough to reach, from pinky to thumb, but I started developing a strain, which is not fun.
Are they easy to press? How does the material feel?
It does not feel cheap. It feels heavy. The controller overall feels pretty heavy, which is good because you kind of want to weight it, and you could just like move your hand around and it won't just like shift it. But also the material feels like this matte plastic that feels like a really nice like game controller. Not the like third party stuff, but the first party stuff. That's the best way for me to describe the Tourbox. Is it feels like a really nice game controller that is first party.
You think you can play Elden Ring on it?
I don't know. I probably will have to try. I'm like curious about like, is this gonna up my APM and my macros skills? I used to play a lot of like StarCraft and Warcraft and all that stuff, so maybe Tourbox will also be like an elite gamer item.
Guaranteed to bring everyone who buys it to Challenger or
I'm imagining all the League players just going like dialing in stuff. As the forest recedes, I'm going to add a little bit, introduce a little bit darker value. So we can start defining out some of these shapes a little bit better. I'm going to have some warmer, darker values too.
Joanna asks, how long have you used the Tourbox?
Honestly, I've only used it for 2 hours. And it already feels like I am just getting started, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. There was a little hiccup when I was trying to receive the item, and it didn't arrive on time. And I was away camping, so I couldn't get the full hang of it yet, but it already feels natural out of the box, so I'm just giving it a very honest review. And I'm seeing the possibilities it has. And I'm just going to get really excited to explore more and more of it. I think the main thing is like I love that the center dial is just right here, because like all the time like I hate pressing those bracket keys just to like change my brush size, and I appreciate that they designed it just right here so I always could just dial it in. The cool thing about the center dial too is you could change up the speed of your dial. And I've been watching like a ton of like videos beforehand to prep for this on how other people use their Tourboxes. But you can change up the speed of your dial right here, speed adjustment, and it could go like from like fast, slow, etc., to like normal. So right now I'm still exploring it, trying to see how it feels before I fine tune it to my specific needs. Right. So we're almost an hour into the painting. And you're just gonna see me just most of my painting is just right now is at the fine tuning stage, fixing a little bit of more so the shape, because remember how chaotic I made everything initially. Introducing a little bit more variation on certain parts of it. Playing with my muted colors too. It's like the temperature of the muted colors are just really going to shine through and help out on this end.
Hey Franklin, I'm gonna ask you the forbidden question. What brush are you using?
Ooh. So these are kind of a brush set that I've been just collected over the years. This one's called Sampled Brush 224. Basically, it's a brush that has a shape like, I don't know, it's like a weird skull with like three little things underneath. But you could kind of see with the spacing right there, it is this really odd shape, but when it comes together, it feels like a really loose, bristly, dry brush. And that's generally how I like drier, chalkier brushes to give me texture. The other thing I use is the smudge tool. So this is a little bit more further down the line when you're just like controlling edges and such. I feel like at the beginning for most people, like I don't like to really touch edges yet until the very end of my painting. Sometimes I know exactly where I want to go for my edge control. Then I could just probably just do a little bit of smudge or brush tool, but or airbrush. But like with edges, it's more like after I've merged everything together, because I like to tend to work in one giant layer on just having all the elements already merged together, so then I could smudge easier, so my computer can handle it. But for now, I'm still maintaining just hard edges. But my main tool, like all these brushes are, I can make them available. I have a brush pack that is on Procreate. If those who are interested, it's on my Instagram profile story. But I'll make the Photoshop brushes available for folks too, free, because I got them for free too, and I modified them to my own use. I highly recommend though everyone to make your own brushes. This way, you know exactly what these brushes will be doing. I wish we had a course on how to make brushes, or a course that involves that. I think that'd be pretty cool. Okay, let's find some of these elements that there's a little bit of warmth over there. I think there's just a bit of rock right here. This part's a little bit messy and noisy. I'm gonna simplify that with just a bit more white water and some sky reflections. And it's gonna take on some of the reflections from here to here. And generally speaking, again, the value structure, even though we were kind of sampling this color, this is still like the same sort of color family, but the value of it is extremely darker, much darker than what's in front on the light side. So I just need a little bit of indicator of that. Then a little bit of just to get some of that color in there. Right. A lot of the colors that I'm sampling right now are just directly from my painting. If I ever need to make a little bit of slight adjustment, kind of go over here. But most of it is now within my palette of the painting. A little bit of brightness and see what happens. Okay, not too bad. Still maintaining that value structure. We're going in to start slowly clean things up. All right, so I worked a lot in the shadow area. Let's go back into the light area just to not play favorites. We'll play favorites until the very end later. Let's see. I'm going to play with some other brushes that I have in my arsenal. This one's a pretty cool brush that changes it up a little bit, color dynamics. I think if I remember correctly, I downloaded this from the Dig old brush pack. Adds a little bit of variation to it.
Question in the chat. Do you use the same process when you're painting plein air? So color thumbnail, underpainting, you're drawing.
Yes. Sometimes I skip a few steps because there's already something that I see. Because I'm most of the time when I'm like looking out to choose a subject, I am actually drawing it or painting it in my head, visualizing things before I actually tackle it. And that's just something that comes with experience and a little bit of time. It's something that hopefully playing April, this whole 30-day challenge will help you develop this sort of eye to, I hate to say like the artist's eye, but the visual know-how to really gauge what you see in front of you and just break things down into elements and shapes. And that's what I've been doing throughout this demo, is just telling you, this is what I see. This is what I'm thinking right now. Very difficult thing to do. I don't recommend people to talk and paint at the same time because it's distracting to hear your own dialogue. But I am really hoping to like just help convey some information over, and hopefully some of you can pick up some of these pointers. They might unlock something that you get those aha moments to really improve and just challenge yourself. And then earlier, some of the paintings that I showed you that were done by me, those are done during plein April, within like 2-3 hours, and usually submitted online at 11:59:59. So that's a gang that I joined up last plein April, where you're just living life on the edge and trying to submit these paintings on time to be eligible for those sweet prizes. I don't recommend people to do that, to be a procrastinator. Plan ahead of time. But there's something about, for me, that I admit that I'm a procrastinator, and I like to live life a little bit closer to the edge. It I don't know. It just motivates me to do things efficiently. I feel like it gives me that extra energy boost. It's like caffeine for me. I know that I did that in college when I would take my finals. I just studied the night before, or yeah, I do that for a lot of things that I feel like I still have enough control, but then like that nervousness, instead of making me paralyzed, motivates me and moves me to like get my ass into gear. I wonder if there's anyone else that feels that way, but I can't be the only one.
I'm with you, Franklin. I'm in the 11:59 club.
Also like the one cool thing about the 11:59 club is you go through like the 7 stages of like what is that, grief, denial, and all that stuff, and then finally you reach the end of acceptance. You're like, this is my piece now. I will just submit it. There's nothing I can do. I'll fix it later. Yeah, I was listening to this podcast about like procrastination. It's a good thing in a sense that like uh, I forgot what they said, but people who procrastinate are kind of like time benders, where they feel like they could achieve so many things within a given amount of time. They become super focused and enter a flow state where things just sort of click and they just go through all these motions until they finish the task at hand. Um, to a varying degree, procrastination is not for everyone. It's super stressful. I lose sleep over it, but it's just unavoidably a workflow that I developed, and I'm trying to change too for the better, just to not procrastinate so late into things. I procrastinate a little bit, and not to the point where I am just losing sleep and just working until 5 in the morning.
What's the name of this procrastination podcast?
Ooh, that's something I want to link later on. I think it might have been a TED talk or some shit, something like that. But I will definitely link that later once I find it, and
Is
then
it the one where he's talking about like the monkey? There's a monkey in his slides.
I heard of that one too, but I don't think it's the monkey one, or maybe it is. But I remember it was a woman speaker. All right, let's make this value extra dark. I want to punch that really shape, and then we're gonna clear off some of these edges over here. So we're defining like right here, this area and this area are going to be more in shadow. So I want to just really define out those planes. See, I can't wait to like get to this part where I'm like, oh, that's gonna be so amazing, but I'm saving that for last because that's just stuff that it's that little treat and motivation in the end for myself. I define this top plane a little bit to. I'm going to use a harder brush. Oh, yeah, it's looking more like a rock. Just like very unique looking rock.
Alvin
I'm gonna use
says,
a little smudge.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Alvin says, speaking of treats, what's your favorite boba?
You know, this is gonna sound terrible, but I'm not like a huge fan of boba. I grew up eating or drinking boba, but the best ones are still in Taiwan, and yeah, it's something that American boba is. It's all right. I usually just get grass jelly. Uh, my partner, she loves boba, so we're always, this household always has boba at hand on the weekends, especially. But the overall time, like I don't really drink boba too much. Uh, for flavor, I like roasted oolong. That's something that I introduced to some folks on this Discord. I think Amanda Gross, she really loves that flavor now too. And I usually get roasted oolong with grass jelly. All right, since I kind of changed the shape of this rock, so I'm just imagining the form of it. So let's draw that out real quick as a guide. Maybe something like this, and then something like that. It's a really odd rock, but yeah, let's define those shapes a little bit. I'm going to use that as a guide. Cool. Darker. Right. And this is where, like, whenever I just need a little bit more color variation, I just smudge things together. It's kind of like using your finger when you're painting traditionally to just smudge it, just to get like a little bit more variation and more gradient. Let's do a bit darker. Really, really dark parts of painting. All right, so I want this to be like the highlight of things, where water is moving a lot, and then just sort of just dissipates a little bit of the energy.
Sally is asking, do you ever leave your paintings unfinished because you run out of time, then finish it later at home?
For plein air, no. Sometimes I do. I've been recently taking that out as a habit to really finish my paintings, but I think I just have that like moment where I'm like, this is just capturing that moment, and including accepting that sort of moment of like not being able to do everything. So I know next time to just like, okay, this is going to take this amount of time. This kind of subject matter will take that amount of time, and I can't tackle that within this time frame. As I develop more and more as an artist, I kind of level up my skill set. I will tackle the same thing again with more confidence because I kind of know it's also a challenge too. I kind of know like, okay, some of the stuff is becoming easier and easier. versus like before, I'm like, oh, this was a really tough challenge. Hopefully that answers that question. Smudge it a little bit. All right, since I love using the smudge tool so much, let's make it an actual thing. I'm gonna set it to one of these D-pad buttons because I really like using it. I don't use the marquee tool too much. I don't use free transform too much. Yeah, let's change this one. Let's change that into, what is my smudge setting? S. Okay, so we're gonna do S. Oh, that's not S. Okay, let's just, I'm gonna brute force it, just call it smudge. Okay, add S. I guess that's something that, oh, there you go, S. Okay. See if that works. I don't think that works right now. Okay, well, I'll fix it later. All right, back to defining more of my shapes. And it's 9:20 right now. I could definitely feel the pressure needing to finish this, but I'm not going to stress myself out too much.
We got another question from Camden.
Mm-hmm.
Balance copying the reference and spicing it up in your
Well, that's at the very beginning when I'm just doing that sort of active thinking of how do I want to change, where do I want to change things, what exactly is speaking to me about this reference image. So before I start like doing anything, I ask myself a series of questions, figuring out what do I want to study and what do I want to achieve. Right. Um, Simplification is one of the easier things to think about when we're doing these things, these sort of studies. How do you simplify things? Because there's no way you're going to copy every single pixel, right? So your own language of simplifying things will kind of determine the style that you will probably be doing these. You can refer to other styles that draws your eyes, other styles that you love from other artists, and use that as a reference. I generally like to just play with shapes. So you could tell at the very beginning when I was playing with these shapes to simplify what's going on over here. And really just define it that way to set some limitations for yourself too. Ooh, these are some of my favorite parts of adding these tree holes. But hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to start getting into more of the nitty gritty of things. Since I already kind of detailed too much things over here, I want to start detailing some things in the back too. And really just honing in on some shapes. So let's see. There's this nice shape over here. I want to capture some of the light too, right? That's going to define that. Shapes over here. And we're slowly just bringing out this tree. There's another one over here. that we could just use an indication, a little bit of a, use that brush that we had earlier. I have like different variations of this brush. And then for the hills, there's some rocks in the back. I'm gonna like warm it up a little bit and then just desaturate it. I'm gonna just play with these shapes too. All that chaos, I'm just kind of reining it in right now. And since this like hill is like further off in the distance, I'm gonna just fake it being cooler for some of the greens. And right here, I'm gonna just add a little bit more. Yeah, a little bit darker shadows over there. And it's the same over here. I'm just gonna fan it out a little bit to give my tree a little bit of depth. And we're going to define some of these for our mid-ground-ish rocks by adding like brighter highlights. I'm going to use a harder brush for that to really define the edge. You don't really need much. Let's just indicate it ever so abstractly, because that's not the part of our focus as much, and we kind of want to just make it abstract and keep it there. All right, I'm going to have some of this. Darker elements. I'm going to refer it back to here. All right, so a bit of this.
Hey, Franklin. So you work full time, you teach, you fish, you have all this stuff that you do, and on top of that, you do a lot of the challenges that we have on Warrior Painters. How do you fit all that into your busy schedule?
Don't sleep. I mean, no, I'm kidding. Prioritize. So for instance, like last time, I couldn't do the challenge of Coast Cards, which I'm kind of sad about because I love trading art pieces, but that's something that I had to sacrifice. So you kind of had to prioritize what you want to do. What exactly is the most important? Like, obviously, for my full time job, my job is important because it pays my bills. Now, where that's the main purpose of my job. My job doesn't provide me fulfillment in terms of like my artistic needs, but it funds it in a sense that I love plein air painting, so that's something that I have to, receive funding for. The next part is now how much do you invest into your job versus how much do you invest into your own personal time, and that's the age old question of like work life balance. I believe like the better you are about work life balance, the more you will be more productive at work, so to say. And that's just, you have to watch out for yourself. Now, when I finally do have the time, I get to just do these challenges. I clear off my schedule. There's some stuff that I get to like, let's say when a challenge comes up, I'm not going to fish as much. Or if I do fish, maybe I can knock out a painting within a certain time frame. Maybe reducing the scope of what my challenges would be. Oops, that is not good. All right. maybe instead of painting a large painting all the time, you could just paint something a little bit smaller. You could have a plain April of like a 1 inch by 1 inch. Challenge yourself. Like that's just like many variables that you could tweak if you want to do everything.
Or maybe fish with one hand and paint with the other?
I have fished with crabbing, where I set up a rod holder, and then every time in between low moments, I'm painting as furiously as possible. So yeah, multitasking is a thing. I get that comment a lot whenever some people come out to the beach and see me do that. But yeah, Alvin, you could use all your limbs if you need to.
I'm not as cool as you yet to achieve that.
You know, you are cool in your own way, and you achieve a lot of different things than I do. So props to you right there. I just have like an ADD assortment of different hobbies I like to explore, and art is not my only thing to do. And I feel like a lot of people let, as artists, a lot of us just let the thing that we do and we love define us the most. But you are really, your own unique self. You can't just be like your own identity of like I'm just an artist. There's so much more to you than you think. And yeah, I'm Franklin. I like to do an assortment of things. And the more you vary your life, the more it's gonna be able to inspire your art too. So there's a win-win scenario on that end. All right, there's some of these elements that are getting a little bit too fussy. So I'm just going to take that smudge tool that I like to use. This one I got from Sam Nielsen's toolbox. It really just decimates some of this like edges. All that fussiness I was using. All right, let's shrink this down. Yeah, this is feeling pretty cool. So some of that underpainting, that purple is kind of showing through and making things warm overall. And my water is looking a lot bluer and cooler. So it feels like inviting and crisp, which is what, when I was looking at the scene, I was feeling I was really attracted to the blue of the water. So that part is really saturated, and I want to even saturate it even more. So let's push that even more. Let's see what happens. Max saturation. Let's go all out. Turn that off.
Nika is asking, what kind of mindset or thought process do you have going into a study? Um, if you had to study English for the purpose of learning how to draft line art versus painting.
Yeah. So trying to study. So like again, I said I'm a very shape based person, right? So I'm thinking in terms of shapes. So these are all my shapes right here. Everyone, let me zoom in a little bit so y'all can see. These are my shapes, right? So I'm trying to maintain these shapes while I'm studying, and that was my goal for this particular study is taking this complex scene and breaking it down into simplistic shapes. I'm gonna turn this on for a guide. I could kind of see like, oh, there's some of these like shadow elements. I haven't resolved these parts yet. I just resolved here and a little bit here, and now I gotta go back into here. Those are the mini goals that I set for myself. There are other studies where I'm like, this is all I want. I just want color and value instead of shapes. There are other ones where I'm like, how do I study a tree, right? How are trees built? And that's something that every study is a little bit different with each different goals that you have. And then this is the part where ADD really comes in handy. I'm like, I was working on this, but now I'm like, oh, I see this thing. I'm like, this needs to be worked on. Like, oh yeah, I was just talking about the saturation of the water. But yeah, I'm like, for me, I jump around a lot in my paintings. But let's go back to this water. 100% saturated. Let's bump up the brightness a little bit, make it bluer. Let's make it a deeper blue. Oof, look at that. Let's just like add a little bit of that into there. Value-wise, it still works, but you could really feel that saturation. And then we could really play with that shape. So this is the fun part where I'm like, I get to, if I really want to get into the nitty gritty of things, like this is like where I am polishing. I really want to define out these shapes. Of course, you can use the lasso tool, but I don't know. I just like feeling it out and drawing it out myself. Lasso tool is probably faster. If I'm strapped on time, I'll use the lasso tool. But I like the draft, the hand sketchedness of the using my my brush. See, really get into that. Let's just polish this up so I could just like this is what it looks like at 100% polish. So y'all could get like a clear picture instead of this other chaos. Oh, and Tourbox, if you're watching, I have a MacBook Pro, so I don't have USB ports as much. So I just used my little iPad cable. But USB, the USB-C connection would be like super great. It works though, so I'm not going to complain about that end over there. There's some of this blue that I just want to transition into. And then, the moment we've been waiting for, trying to get some of that movement. And I'm going to use the smudge tool, but first I'm going to just lay down these shapes. Just imagining, this shape and this shape, because like the rock is kind of wedging it. And I still need to find what's underneath this part. There's a little bit of the moss growing in there too. And then we could just add a little bit of moss growth. And the really fun part about this is like we're trying to convey motion. Let's zoom out a little bit and see how that feels. It looks like a P stream, so this is where I'm going to smudge a little bit. Smudging is like manually making this permanently squinty looking. And then you can redefine some things too. I generally like to blur out my images just to redefine it again. I do that in my paintings, especially in oils, where I would wipe down my painting entirely after working on it for like an hour and a half. And then on the last minute, 30 minutes, I'm just like redefining some of these edges again. It's a great way to like reestablish things, getting a fresh start. So a little bit about this image. This is over at Big Sur, the campgrounds that I was staying at this weekend. And yeah, this was part of a little bit of a hike upstream of this river. We set up some traps, caught some crawdaddies. They were delicious. And yeah, that was a really fun trip. It was a good, refreshing trip. I gathered a lot of references, fished a lot, and just had a good time with friends. I'm really inspired after that trip to like just come back and figure out what else I want to paint during Plain April. But definitely some of the references I gathered here. Slowly getting there. And define some of these edges. So, as soon as I like throw in the darks and the highlights, these edges are just slowly coming out. Again, it's kind of like working in sort of blurred state, this chaotic textural state, into defining things out. A little bit darker so I could punch out this foreground boulder a little bit more. Get this a little bit brighter. Again, I think we come to a time where I might have to throw on that little value check again. Taking my time to reevaluate things. I'll zoom out a little bit. Value check this thing. Yeah, the brightest area is still there. Looking okay. Come back in. I'm going to start, using some of the shadow shapes to help accentuate some of these other elements that I have. Now there's this like swoop. I think that I kind of want to emulate here. So let's just like do that, help carry it. There's this part where a little pit of shadow. I'm going to make this a tiny bit darker too, just so that I could just have a little bit more separation. And this is where I'm like just modifying more so based on how it's going to help the painting, less so based on like what is accuracy, right? Based on my image. I'm having a lot of these like vertical elements to cement more towards these horizontal-ish elements right here. Kind of just all pointing towards this rock. And I don't want it to be too obvious too, so I'm going to break it apart a little bit. But you know, the more detail you're going to work into some of these things, the more detail you're going to add into other parts of your painting too. Sometimes knocking back what you detailed out can be helpful to alleviate some of these problems. That's feeling a little bit better. All right, let's catch this highlight over here. That's looking really cool. This highlight is actually reflected from, yeah, you can see my cursor. It's right here. It's reflected from here, so I'm gonna just capture some of that. Just bring that down too. A little bit of warmth. Don't want it to be too strong.
We have a question about the Tourbox. Are the
Yeah,
keyboard shortcuts, are they saved to the device or are they saved to the computer?
they're saved to the computer application. At least that's to my knowledge. I don't know if any representative from Tourbox is right here that can answer that question, but to my knowledge, they are saved to your device. Not to your device, but to your computer. A little bit of that sky element. Getting closer and closer to, let's see, what we want. So we have 15 more minutes. Yeah, feel free to ask any more questions. I'll try to answer. I think on the last 4 minutes, we're going to check out this video that kind of explains what Tourbox is like for artists. For those who want to stay and watch that, I think that was kind of like a cool promo video that sold me on Tourbox after seeing so many people positively affected by it. Is that little guide I have over here? Okay. Now let's make this darker even, just to find out even more. So once we darken that part, we could darken this a little bit more. Just a bit. This a little bit darker. Well, that's reading a little bit better. Now I'm going to redefine some of these elements that I smudged earlier. Going back to that circular webby shape that I was so enamored with. And you can gradually hear me talk less because I'm just getting more into my workflow right now. So, Lyndon, have you tried out a Tourbox yet?
No, not yet, but it looks really cool. I want to try it.
I know Angela has a Tourbox and she swears by it too.
Yeah.
That's something that I remember. Like my first impression is like, what is this joystick thing? I guess you want to make painting fun, like a video game. That's something you could do. But I wasn't entirely sold on it yet, and it's one of those things that you had to try. I wish you could try before you buy, but it's definitely after you try it, you either love it or hate it. Some people, but again, it's just like new hardware and software. You'll learn to just adapt to it, and I really do think it will become a lot faster for some folks. I can't guarantee everyone's going to be fast, having a faster workflow, but it's worth a try to like try to be more efficient, right? And it helps a procrastinator guy like me that really craves efficiency. Oop, check that value. Uh, I'm breaking the value key a little bit, just a tiny bit, but hopefully it's not too much. So I'm just checking that value right now. That's about like 73, but like everything else right here is in the pretty high range. Um, like the lowest is 78, but that's okay. Like you could break it a little bit here and there just to get tiny bit of pop. That's called breaking your value key. That will draw attention to certain things. And it's a really powerful tool. Something you kind of want to use sparingly. And that really helps define this rock edge too. All right. Now this rock is looking a little bit more designed. It's not exactly like that rock, but I'm taking some of the elements that I like about that particular rock to add into my own, right? Maybe this rock has some history and there's like this cool fossil over here. I love fishing, so why not add a little fishy? There you go. Gives it a little bit more personality. So I'm just like changing up a little bit of a variation in hue and all that stuff within the shadow area too. It's something that you can't really see, but you feel more so. But I know I did it, so versus like if it's like a flat color, so I'm just breaking the color down a little bit more. That's all. Maintaining the same value. It's so minute and yeah, it's so minuscule that you can't see it. changing the brush. The main thing I'm using this Tourbox right now is just changing the brush size. I think this itself is a game changer. If they sold like one tiny little thing, like a Tourbox Mini, of just the essentials, definitely just have like a knob just to change the brush size. That's all I really need. Make this cooler a little bit. Now let's check out how that looks far away. Yeah, this rock definitely jumps out a lot more. So I'm liking how that's turning out. Yeah, I'm at a pretty good spot. Might share that little Tourbox video soon, Lyndon. And then later on, I'll post this once I finish this too. Yeah, before we do that, I'll link you that video just in case you don't have it.
Okay.
The little moss over here. All right, let me link to you the video. There you go. But yeah, Lyndon, if you could play that video for folks, I'm gonna just continue painting. But for anyone who wants to check out that video, it's a really cool introduction of like what Tourbox is doing and what they're trying to help us out with artists. All right. Now, while that second is happening, my plan of attack next when I try to tackle this more, define more of this area. This is kind of at a good polished state of like what the level of detail this painting will probably have. I might detail this out a little bit more, maybe even just add a little bit of texturing to it too. But yeah, I mean, so far I've been just having fun. You know, Playing Pro is not about just winning prizes, but just having fun, exploring and discovering things when you're painting. And that's really the main prize, you know, as sappy as that sounds, is improvement and just finding out yourself, learning about yourself as an artist.
Friends you make along the way.
Yes, you know, please join my 115959 gang if you want to. It is highly discouraged from everyone else. I know Angela and Kaylee are like, no, don't do this. But, you know, at least you know that you're suffering along with me. I think that, you know, misery loves company. And, yeah, I look forward to playing April. And for those who want to speed up your playing April, try out Tourbox.
Yeah, thanks for the demo, Franklin. I'm gonna have the Tourbox video up now for everybody.
Awesome.
You're not.
I think this type of innovation, this is kind of setting a trend.
Oh, sorry, technical difficulties. 1 second.
Franklin, do you think you could finish this by 11:59?
59 seconds though. I need like 11:59 and 59 seconds. You know, right before it strikes midnight. And yeah, I believe so. Ooh, there's a lot of repeated elements I don't like about this area right now. Crisscross that.
Okay, here we go.
Moving forward, this type of innovation for artists for keyboard shortcuts.
I don't think about what keys I need to press on my keyboard, I
Should I
just
still
use this
continue my
controller.
stream
I
part,
found it
or-
very useful, especially since I was
Go for
using a
that.
smaller tablet, so sometimes navigating to the edge of the screen was really hard. Yes, it does save a lot more time.
If you're looking to add a new level of complexity to your workflow, at least temporarily, because I'm sure eventually it becomes a wonderful companion.
I'd recommend this to anybody who is using a drawing program or anything where you're kind of doing this all day, Photoshop, Lightroom, where you're doing keystrokes. It's going to so speed up your life.
Just with the movement of a couple of my fingers, I can cover everything that I need to do in Photoshop.
한꺼번에 지져도 수목에 무리가 없는 점이 좋았어. 내가 사용하는 단축키만 설정하면 되기 때문에 괜히 헷갈릴 필요도 없는 게 제일 좋고 촉감이 부드럽기도 하고 뭔가 쓰다듬기 좋은 촉감이라 그것도 좋다.
割り振ってでこいつはペンの太さをね割り振ってるんですけどこれをね全部を片手の届く範囲でできるっていうのはなかなか
이제 마우스와 키보드가 해야 할 일을 이 컨트롤러가 단 한 번의 클릭으로 바로 실행시켜준다는 게 너무 매력적인 것 같아요.
And here my brush is super soft, spin it a little bit forward and it's a bit harder, spin it a bit more, even farther, a bit more, and it's 100%.
I'm doing the scrolls, I'm doing the zoom in and out, I'm doing the brush adjustments, I'm doing the selection, and it's fun. And you can see I'm not touching my keyboard at all.
So I'm like, big stroke, and then I'm like, little stroke. Look at this. This is so cool. Oh no, I like it.
So I prefer to have something solid like this, and it's very easy to use. This is very, very helpful.
If you're like me and spend a lot of hours a day drawing or just working on your computer in general, this little dude is going to change your life.
However, I do like how compact and small it is where I can constantly change where it's placed. But nowadays I really use it a lot, and it's making the workflow more comfortable for me.
I love the feeling of it. It's so cool to have both of my hands busy while I'm drawing. I feel like such an artist. I know it's weird to say, but it's true. I was a little worried that I would have trouble using it with my left hand, but there are absolutely no issues with it. I can multitask really naturally, and I don't have issues keeping my hand on the device while I draw.
It has slightly changed my life already, and I think the more I use it, the more it becomes a habit. It's going to just totally change my life.
This is meant to replace your keyboard. I really just think it's a good quality device, and I think it's not a waste of time or money.
So far, I'm planning to keep using Tourbox. I think it's gonna be really cool. When I'm actually like drawing or something, this is super comfortable.